course, every year since I've been back in Congress, I introduce a bill that would abolish selective service. Selective service and the draft just means the government is stating the fact that they own a certain group of individuals. And there are two things I think the government emphasizes on ownership of people. One is the income tax, to prove that they own everything we earn and that we are obedient and only keep a certain part. And that, of course, is why I want to get rid of the income tax. And of course, the other is the selective service, and if you can draft people off and go fight undeclared war, that's a pretty bad situation. But you know, another issue that I talk about a lot, although it's an economic issue, it's also an issue of foreign policy, and that has to do with the monetary system. We have in the 20th century, and it looks like this century as well, we seem to be having continuous wars. And the Federal Reserve was started in 1913, and quickly thereafter we financed each and every war through the creation of new money and credit. Is that we had to pay for the guns and butter of the 1960s, and the fallacy of the policies that we had to get us in Vietnam. But we had to pay for it. But this idea that you can tax and then inflate to support illegal, unconstitutional, unwise military adventurism is something that could be really slowed down a whole lot if we just made sure that a secretive monetary scheme, such as what we have with the Federal Reserve, weren't able to counterfeit the money and spend it into the military-industrial complex. And therefore, ultimately, for economic, moral, constitutional reasons, as well as the support that the fiat is right now, this is related to excessive military spending overseas. And if we act wisely now, we could work our way out of this. But if we continue to do what we're doing, we're going to have an end to the system, but it won't be pleasant, because runaway inflation and destruction of a currency is very, very bad. And that is the direction that we're going in. You know, Taft in the 1950s, I really think the old right that Robert Taft represented even though Taft lost in 52, of course it got much worse because his voice was lost after a year. But he did have an influence to a degree on Eisenhower, although Eisenhower represented the Eastern military type of establishment. Taft had a lot of influence, and although Eisenhower put some money and some advisors into Vietnam, he did restrain himself. He took the advice and stayed away from sending the troops in there, which was negated, of course, right after Eisenhower left office, and then the military troops went in and led to a problem. But one of Taft's last speeches, after he lost the election and before he died, had to do, of course, with foreign policy and the inadvisability of getting further bogged down. He warned about it and predicted it would be catastrophic if we did go in there. So he was very perceptive. But a lot of people ask the question, you know, what if the surge would work? Would you still be opposed to this? What if this worked? And on and on. But you know, the truth is, if we're doing the wrong thing, if you're robbing a bank and you're real successful, you say, oh, it went well, nobody was killed, and we got a lot of money. I mean, so it justifies it? No, if it's the wrong thing to do and it's successful, I mean, you don't want anybody to die, but just because it's successful, you shouldn't reassure ourselves and say, oh, that's okay, it's working. We invaded Grenada, it went well, so I guess we can do this. You know, we overthrew a dictator in Panama, oh, that went well, so we can do that anytime. We can do that anytime we want. But eventually, empire catches up to a country, and that's what's happening today. We cannot maintain the empire, and the message is loud and clear. The political message is very clear. Even today, we find that the three head candidates on the other side, and all of them all of them on our side, all say that on our side they say you have to put more and more, spend more and more, and stay forever, and spread the war into Iran. But the other side isn't taking any position on it. They're not saying take everything off the table, even a nuclear first strike against Iran. They're not saying that. And now they're saying, the opposition is saying, well, we can't, we should keep troops there to 2013. You know, there's no serious intent because they do not follow it from any principled, constitutional, moral position. It's just none of our business to be over there, and we ought to just come home. Now, the fact that we're so much involved actually allows us an option for solving some of our problems. Because my approach is this when I'm trying to figure out how we get out of this mess that we're in. As a constitutionalist, I don't endorse the welfare state, and I don't endorse our militarism and the empire. But I don't run, let's say we didn't have a military empire, and let's say we did have a child's program for children, a medical program for children. I probably wouldn't get exercised about that and say, well, what we have to do is immediately take that away from them. Although constitutionally and economically they don't work. I mean, it'll fail. So we have a lot of people dependent on the government. You know, the retirees, Social Security, and Medicare, and now prescription drugs. To start there politically isn't going to work. You just can't go out and say, I think we heard it the other night. What we have to do, in order to get our budget in shape, this is a typical Republican response. To get our budget in shape, we have to cut all this welfare. Well, you know, it doesn't work that way. Politically, you can't work it. But if we only would change our foreign policy, which would reduce spending, it would make us safer, give us a strong national defense, remove the incentive for the radical individuals who are willing to commit suicide and come into this country and kill us, all this stuff would be reduced if we just changed our policy. But not only, the most important thing is, think of the money we would save. I mean, there was one individual who did a study and added up everything conceivable related to overseas activities. And he came up with a figure close to $1 trillion a year. He expects next year it'll be over $1 trillion to maintain our empire. We have over 700 bases. We are in 130 countries. The morale of our military is down. The equipment's in shambles. And what are they doing? Are they talking about reassessment? No, they're talking about bombing Iran. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. But what if we changed our policy? We could cut $200 or $300 billion out of that rather quickly. We could bring our troops home. Not only neutralize the efforts that we're pursuing erroneously, you know, in the Middle East, but what about Europe? Why don't we just come home from Europe and Korea? Don't you think it's time we came home?